Hello there, fight fans. This is Fight Fan MMA. We're going to come at you once a week talking about MMA news, doing MMA fight picks, UFC, Bellator, World Series of Fighting, whatever the fuck we want to talk about. We're going to cuss. We're going to go off random tangents. Now let's introduce ourselves. My name is Brian, and my co-star over here is
Ian.
And so, first, we're going to talk about UFC 173. This Saturday, May 24th. And let's just get straight to it.
First fight, Penn Barrow, TJ Dillashaw.
Now, this fight's going to be very interesting. TJ Dillashaw is coming off a pretty good win over Mike Easton. But right before that, he did go to a split decision loss. And I don't think he's ready for this thing.
I really don't.
Not against Barrow. Barrow's way too damn good. He's just demolished everybody for the last how many years?
He hasn't lost since his first professional fight. Now, a lot of his record is loaded with regional low-tier fighters. Yeah, I mean, you can't really pull any names off of the first chunk of his record, but he entered the UFC in 2012, I believe, 2011, and he has not 2011 he entered the UFC. He hasn't lost since, and he was unbeaten in WEC before that. I mean,
Yeah,
the guy's on a tear.
the guy's on a tear. He beat TJ Dillashaw's trainer or partner,
Training partner, Uriah Faber, was one of three people in his career to finish Uriah Faber, and the only one at 135. The only other two being Mike Brown and Tyson Griffin way back at Gladiator Challenge in like 2005 at lightweight.
Yeah, pretty fucking insane. So, of course, I think everyone else is also picking Barrow because of the betting odds on that fight are pretty ridiculous.
I just can't see any way that TJ Dillashaw can do anything that anybody hasn't done to Penn Barrow and actually score damage. I mean, Uriah Faber just looked slow against Barrow. Barrow's got speed for days, and he finishes people. Mm-hmm. He's not, no offense to his stablemate, Jose Aldo. He's actually finishing people. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't picked up a fan base only because he can't speak English and he looks like the squirrel from Ice Age, which is unfortunate. It's not really fair, but he has yet to catch on with any audience, mainstream in the U.S., but he is killing people.
Did you say the squirrel from Ice Age?
I'm telling you. Look it up. He looks like the squirrel from Ice Age. Bad boy. One or the other.
The squirrel from Ice Age. That's pretty funny. All right, next fight. The co-main event. Daniel Cormier versus Dan Henderson. The duel of the Dans.
And honestly, how anybody can see this for Dan Henderson is beyond.
If you think Dan Henderson's going to win this with an H-bomb, I think you are absolutely crazy.
That's what you're going to hear. Oh, well, all it takes is one right hand. Dan Henderson's got that H-bomb. One right hand. He's got a puncher's chance. This isn't Shogun Rua. Dan Henderson's won one fight in his last four, and that is Shogun Rua. And Shogun Rua stunned him and almost dropped him twice. And Dan landed that one right hand. But Shogun is another guy who's old. He's lost some speed. He's lost some ability. He's not the same fighter he was coming out of Pride. Sorry, I know everybody loves Shogun Rua. Hardcore fans think he's the next coming of Jesus Christ. But Shogun got dropped by Henderson. And Shogun's been on a little bit of a skid. He's old. He's beat up. He's had too many fights. Dan Henderson's got nothing for him. Dan Henderson's got absolutely nothing for Cormier. Cormier is going to clinch him, stuff him against the fence, control him, and beat him up. Because Henderson's wrestling has never really worked the way it does in wrestling in MMA. He's never been that dominant guy like Randy Couture that can control the fight.
And Daniel Cormier is undefeated. He's, 14-0?
And with some notable names. I mean, you can pick apart some of the wins. Oh, well, they're not that great.
Pat Curran won, but...
Frank Mir, Pat Cummins, he was working at a coffee shop. Okay, I get it, but he still took out Josh Barnett at heavyweight. Mm-hmm. He still took out Frank Mir, who both are not on the best stretch of their careers, but they're top 10 heavyweights.
They are.
And Daniel Cormier has got an Olympic wrestling background that trumps Dan Henderson's. First time Dan Henderson's ever seen anybody like that. Not to mention, let's not forget, Dan Henderson's coming off of TRT. No more testosterone replacement. He hasn't fought without it since 2007. Yeah, it hasn't been that much of a hot topic for a while, but he's been on it since 2007. I just don't see it. The last fight Henderson had before TRT, a loss to Rampage Jackson. It's been that long that he's been on TRT. The guy's getting up there in years. He's just an old guy. He's 43 years old. I don't see him being able to land that one right hand.
And don't forget, Daniel Cormier does train with Cain Velasquez, who
Daniel
is
Cormier's
the heavyweight champ.
He's got a great gas tank. He's not gonna gas out, especially in a 3-round fight.
No, and I can knock him for beating Pat Cummins a little bit, but he looked fucking impressive. He looked great at 205. He looked faster. He looked more in shape. He just looked overall better fighter. He's gonna do some damage.
And that betting line, Cormier is anywhere from -800 to -1050 as a favorite. Mm-hmm. Which, if you're familiar with MMA betting lines, is insane.
That's fucking insane.
The closest I've seen for Henderson is a +550. It's not like we're the only ones saying Dan Henderson's gonna die. Dan Henderson is gonna lose by decision. It's not gonna be like he's gonna get killed. I don't see Cormier finishing him. It's possible.
It is possible.
But Henderson's got a gas tank where he hits close to Eve really quick and then just goes for the next 3 rounds almost exhausted and still is competitive. And he's got an iron jaw. I don't see him getting finished, but I don't think he's got a chance. Cormier's going to stuff him against the fence and pound him. That's just what it's going to
happen. Now the next fight is Robbie Lawler versus Jake Ellenberger. This fight we've been arguing a little bit about because I think Robbie Lawler is most likely going to win this pretty good.
And I'm kind of on the fence. Robbie Lawler, let's not forget, yes, he's been on this tear, and the MMA media wants to talk about his resurgence at 170 and how great he looks, but beating Josh Koscheck and Bobby Volker doesn't really make you a star. His fight with Johnny Hendricks was great, and I think that shows us a lot, but let's not count out Jake Ellenberger, and let's remember that Robbie Lawler has recently, within the last 5 years, lost to Jake Shields, Babalu Sobral, Jacare, Tim Kennedy, and Lorenz Larkin. His last fight in Strikeforce, he lost to Lorenz Larkin, who has been a dud so far in the UFC. So, I do think Ellenberger's got a chance. He's got a couple of little losses on his record that don't look too good either.
Like Martin Kampmann.
Martin Kampmann knocked him out, but let's not forget that was late in the fight. I mean, that was a crazy knockout.
It was. Oh yeah, that was a crazy knockout. I remember that fight.
But that's one where Jake Ellenberger took him to the limit, and got knocked out at the middle of the second round. But he was pushing the pace. Mm-hmm. And Rory McDonald, he lost that split decision. I don't know if everybody agree with that or not, but Rory and Lawler are two different kinds of fighters. Lawler's going to push the pace, and that could really help him, but it might not help him too much. Ellenberger still has crazy power. He's got good power and he's got good wrestling, and he will be going for the takedown, unlike Johnny Hendricks, who is perfectly willing to stand and throw.
But we also can't forget about his last 2 wins, too. Jake Ellenberger's last 2 wins were only against Jay Heron and Nate Marquardt.
Jay Heron, winless in the UFC, beat up some guys in Bellator, but never made it in the top level, and Nate Marquardt, who, after testosterone, just hasn't looked the same. I mean, he crushed Tyrone Woodley and looked amazing doing it. But since then, he hasn't exactly looked like a world beater.
So the betting odds are actually pretty tight. They're pretty tight for that one. They could be a little tighter for how good the fight is. But
well, there's a -260, Ellenberger +180, but pretty close. I feel like it should be closer. I'm really interested for that fight. It's going to be my favorite fight of that card, I think. That's one where I really want to see it.
It's going to be a very interesting fight, especially for the division.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure, almost 100% sure, that Barao is going to dominate Dillashaw and Cormier is going to kill Henderson. But this one, I can't rightfully pick it. If I had to, if you pushed me, I'd probably go with Lawler. But I don't feel safe picking it. I definitely wouldn't put money on this fight. Don't put money on this fight.
I'm going to pick Robbie Lawler. You can bet it, but it probably won't be worth it because he is -260. Unless you want to do a parlay with...
But I don't even know where to call this fight a finish. I don't know. I can't. I don't know if Lawler can knock him out in the first. I don't know if Ellenberger's going to gas at the end. That's been proven. I'd imagine he's probably going to do the same thing. He doesn't hold up well late in the rounds. But it's only a 3-round fight. This isn't going 5. If this went 5, I think Ellenberger would be dead on his feet.
Oh, yeah, he would die. Lawler would beat him in the 5th, no doubt. All right, the next fight.
Mizugaki and Francisco Rivera at 135.
Now this fight is we've been talking about a little more now. Mizugaki has some big names. He's fought a lot of big people. While what's his name? Francisco.
Yep.
Francisco. He his 2 big wins are versus George Roop and I'm blanking on the other guy's name.
George Roop, love that name, and Edwin Figueroa.
Edward Figueroa.
Not exactly huge names. Really not. I mean, he's lost to Eric Koch, and he's lost to Ruben Duran, which, is what it is. I don't think he's that good. I really don't see him as a top flight guy. I think Mizugaki's a top flight guy. I think Mizugaki can take this fight. In the UFC, he's got 2 losses to Brian Bowles and Cariaso. Both, I thought he won both of them. I think he should be undefeated in the UFC. But, outside of those 2, Scotty Jorgensen, Uriah Faber, the last 2 to beat him in the WEC, and they were on the top of the world at that point. So, I think Mizugaki can take this. Since then, he's beaten up on four fights in a row. Jeff Howland, Brian Caraway, Eric Perez, and Nam Phan. I mean, the guy's on a tear. Sort of.
I think the guy Mizugaki's probably going to win this. It's going to go to a decision.
And he's knocking on the door for a title shot. They're not a deep division. There's not a lot of guys clamoring for that shot.
Not right now. No.
Not lining up. Mizugaki deserves it and can get that close, and he's got to do it. He's getting up in years. He doesn't have a whole lot of career left. This might be, the last good shot he's got in the UFC. He's 30 years old, and he's got a lot of fights on his record. This guy's got 28 fights. And it wasn't too long ago that people were like, oh, is he going to stay in the UFC? Is he still going to be here? Now he's won 4 in a row, and he's on a tear. I think, unfortunately, this won't be the fight that puts him over the edge. You never know at 135, but I think he's going to need another one, a big name, in order to get it. But I didn't think TJ Dillashaw was going to get a shot either. So.
Yeah.
I don't know where the hell that came from.
I don't know where that came from. He's not ready.
You need people to fight Barao, and what do you got at 135? It's not a deep division.
Well, when you have Uriah Faber versus Bruce Leroy, Alex Cancrase fighting each other, you need fights. You need fights at 135.
Bruce Leroy, Uriah Faber. Why? Why? Bruce Leroy's building up a record. He's building up a name. He's getting up there. He's finally catching some momentum, and he could do something in the future. You're going to derail that with Uriah Faber.
You are.
Uriah Faber's going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
They're not on the same level right now. They're just not. Caceres is still early in his career. Uriah Faber is an established dog.
Yeah, and Bruce Leroy's been on it, and he's been on a winning streak.
And
just beat over Sergio Pettis.
You're gonna feed him up to Uriah Faber. Done. Done. But I'm gonna take Mizugaki. I think he's got it. I think Mizugaki doesn't have any major holes in his game. He's not the best striker. He's not the best grappler, but he's competent everywhere. He's good everywhere. And I think, as tough as he is, and as big as his gas tank is, there's no way that Rivera's going to put him in hot water anywhere where he can't survive.
Yep.
And I don't think Rivera can keep the pace and stand the punishment.
Mizugaki, we're going to take that one. On to the next one. We're only going to do the main card today. The prelims, they really aren't that special.
There's a couple we could talk about, but there's just not enough body of work for me to really get into discussion between Katsunori Kakuno
and Tony Ferguson. Or Chris Cariaso versus Francisco Trinaldo.
Let's be honest, this card's taking some heat for not being all that deep.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with the card, but I'm not going into picking on this
by Bjork Revny.
Yeah.
But all right, the final fight, the first fight of the night, Jamie Varner versus James Krause. We have some argument over this one.
I don't see Jamie Varner being able to pull it out. He's a big Jamie Varner fan.
I'm a Varner fan, and of course, after seeing some statistics, if he's able to take to the ground, if he's able to play into his fight, he'll be able to win this.
It's going to look like the Abel Trujillo fight. If he decides he wants to wrestle and he can take this fight down, which Varner has the ability to do, he can win that fight. He could have taken Abel Trujillo down and survived. Mm-hmm. But he wanted to stand up with Abel Trujillo, who's got one positive working for him in that fight. A massive, massive power punch. What's he do? He stands with him. Guess what? Abel Trujillo by murder because he stood up with him. James Krause is a great striker. James Krause is on a huge tear. Mm-hmm. And James Krause is going to win this fight if they stand him down.
Yeah, he's one hell of a striker. We just got to make sure Jamie Varner gets the fight to the ground, so he can win this fight and stay in the UFC, unless it's a very exciting fight, and then he'll stay.
That's the rough patch. If Jamie Varner loses this, that's 4 of his last 5 he's lost. What does the UFC do? He's exciting. He won Fight of the Night in one of those losses against Gleison Tibau and in one of those losses against Joe Lauzon, but do you keep him around? He's an established vet, which is a good thing. He doesn't make a lot of money, not compared to some guys. He's not a top shelf guy, which is a good thing. You can keep him around then. But he also just lost 4 out of 5. What do you do? None of them are against schmucks. I mean, Gleison Tibau, Joe Lauzon, and Abel Trujillo are not nobodies. James Krause doesn't have a big name. That's a hard loss to look at if you're Jamie Varner. It's not like James Krause is a household name. I honestly think this is one of those fights where the UFC is going, okay, well, if Varner wins, great. You know, we have Jamie Varner with a win on his record. We keep marketing that. If he loses, James Krause just got a nice little name on his mantelpiece. And what do you do with Varner? Do you cut him?
I don't know if you can.
I sure as hell hope not, but they might.
Yeah.
So we're saying if Varner wants to take this to the ground, I don't see any way that he's going to lose this. And he's got the wrestling chops. He can pound. He can ground him, and then he can pound him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got underrated submissions. He's not a great submission artist, but he can use them. If they stand and bang.
Krause has got it.
You know, Krause is walking into that cage going, let me bang, bro. Let me bang. He's going to kill him.
So, Varner, if you're watching this, I hope you are, because that'd be fucking awesome. Take it to the ground. Beat James out. We want you to stay in the UFC. But fuck it.
Yeah, don't get drawn into a slugfest, because that's just trouble. That's not good.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, I guess our second topic that we're going to discuss is the Bellator pay-per-view.
Yeah, Bellator 120. Now, some of the numbers are back. Not anything big. Bjorn Rebney's kind of being all secret about the live gate. SureDog.com asked him right after the event what it was a live gate. He said he didn't know, which is bull. Any promoter, they know that number. That's the number one thing they need to learn right away.
So if you're hiding it, you're scared shitless, and you fucking fail.
And the Bellator pay-per-view buys, nobody's heard anything, but I imagine they're not great. They're probably not great. Now, the prelims leading up, Czech Congo headlining the prelims did 712,000 views. And Czech Congo, for some reason, don't ask me why, because he's not fun to watch, has become a big draw for Bellator. Every time he's on, their views go up. He's been able to pull viewers in, and I still have no idea why. But he headlined the prelims against a guy who looked like he just walked into the cage for the first time and beat him up pretty boring. Mm-hmm. Took the win, 712,000 views, but how many of those people transferred to the pay-per-view and actually paid? That's the question.
That is the question, especially when they were going from $30 to $45, depending on where you were.
With Rebney's excuse that he let the cable companies decide on the price. Okay. I don't know. Honestly, in the pay-per-view did not... I know everybody wants to talk it up like it was some strange success the way it went down. I don't see the success in it. No. If you go through that card front to back, you start off with Michael Page. Michael Page fighting Rick Rainey. Rick Rainey looked like he didn't belong in the same cage. Michael Page danced around for 4.5 minutes and then finished the fight. It was a great breakdancing exposition. It was great. And then he killed him with a strike. But I'm not impressed by Michael Page until you put him in with a wrestler. Somebody who's got some ground game and who's going to make him work. Rick Rainey's just a perfect matchup. Good job by Bellator's matchmaking, making sure Michael Page can't lose a fight.
Especially if you're trying to bump him up to be the next Anderson Silva, you got to give him some fights, though. You got to give him a real name.
I understand taking it slow, and it's not like the UFC hasn't taken it slow with some guys, but you're not taking it slow with a guy and putting him on the main card. You're taking it slow with a guy and putting him on the undercard, building him up. You take it slow, not on the main card. Not here's a feature fight with a guy that we're going to put in with a schmuck. And I'm not talking bad about Rick Rainey, but he's not on the same level as a striker as Michael Page, and he didn't try and do anything else but stand and bang with him. And so that fight, okay, whatever. It's not a terrible fight for them. It worked out the way they wanted it to. Then you go into the heavyweight fight. Blago Ivanov, Alexander Volkov. You know Bellator, if they had their choice, wanted Ivanov to win. He has the great backstory. He was stabbed and almost murdered a couple of years ago. And he's a Sambo guy, which they love. Volkov's already fought Minikov and lost pretty handily. So, do they really want to do the rematch? Probably not, but they will. They'll take it.
They want to build the name up.
Boring fight in the first. Volkov can't find range and strike because Ivanov's pushing in, pins him against the fence. A lot of grappling back and forth, dirty boxing, not too exciting. Second round starts, same thing. Ivanov hits a takedown, gives up his back when the takedown goes wrong when they hit the ground on a throw. Volkov cinches that choke up and bang, done. Okay, so you didn't really show me much. And I don't really think Volkov could stand Minikov the second time either. So, okay, boring fight, nothing great, but not a bad fight. So far the card's going okay.
All right.
This is where it falls apart. Tito Ortiz, Alexander Shlemenko.
Fucking Tito Ortiz versus Alex Shlemenko should have never even happened.
All right, Alexander Shlemenko's a small middleweight.
Small
guy.
middleweight.
Tito Ortiz hasn't won a fight in how long?
1-7 in his
1-7-1 since UFC 66. UFC 66, 1-7-1. With a win over Ryan Bader and a draw with Michelle Ross. And 7 losses.
And he got lucky with the Ryan Bader fight. He caught him and got him into a guillotine.
8 years, 1 win. And you put him in with your 185-pound champion that Bjorn Rebney was saying, what about? Oh, he's the best in the world, right? How much did he talk about?
He talks so much about him. He
he's
loved
so
him.
good. Well, the fight goes, Tito comes out, geriatric, really slow, throwing punches like he's underwater. His takedowns look like they have no drive and power in them. Seriously, that bad. Then he manages to clinch up with Shlemenko and just basically falls forward and gets the takedown, at which point he transitions over to a choke while Shlemenko looks like he's laying on the ground going, ooh, what's this? What's jiu-jitsu? I don't know. What? Oh. And he gets choked out. He looked like he had no idea what it was. Fish out of water. And that's a guy that you're trying to say is a top 3 guy in the world, could compete with Chris Weidman and the likes in the UFC. Weidman would have pounded him into the mat and beat him senseless or choked him out in about 10 seconds.
Come on, Rebney. If you're going to talk so much stuff, back it up with your fighters.
Now, this is terrible for Bellator because this is the one champion with some momentum. Nobody's talking about their champion at 205. Everybody's talking about King Mo and Rampage and nothing else. People don't even know who has the belt, which is terrible. Right? Yeah, Emmanuel Newton's got the belt, but how many people know that? How many people know that Vitaly Minikov is the heavyweight champion? Anybody paying attention to 170 with Douglas Lima? No. Anybody paying attention to the lower weight classes? Is anybody really excited for Daniel Curran or for Pat Curran, Daniel Strauss again?
Not for the 3rd time.
I'm kind of excited. It's a good fight, but fans aren't tuning in for that. Bellator's pulled great views on Spike with Chet Congo, with King Mo, with Rampage Jackson, not with their established champions, other than Shlemenko. Shlemenko's pulling some views. Now you derailed him and you crushed all that by making him look like a complete scrub against Tito Ortiz. Complete scrub. It's terrible for Bellator. And it gets worse. Michael Chandler and Ill Will Brooks.
Michael Chandler loses to Ill Will Brooks.
Completely unheralded lightweight. Great fight, by the way. The whole fight was awesome. It was an absolute war. I loved watching it. Best fight on the pay-per-view. But not exactly what Bellator wanted to see, and it throws that whole division into a mess. Now, you have an interim belt held by Will Brooks that you know Bellator wanted their poster boy, who's got an 8-year contract, and 8-fight contract, and all this stuff. Michael Chandler, they've thrown all kinds of promotion behind him. They wanted him to get that win. Now he loses.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
He loses, which then puts a terrible position in Bellator in a terrible position with everything else. Eddie Alvarez. Wow. Eddie Alvarez still has the belt. He also has a stipulation in his contract that his next fight is going to be on a pay-per-view. They're going to have to do another one because they matched the UFC contract that offered Alvarez pay-per-view shares, and the only reason they were able to do it is because they guaranteed he could get a pay-per-view.
Yep.
So it's going to be on pay-per-view. Alvarez also has a stipulation where he can request Michael Chandler and has to get the Chandler fight. So if he gets the Chandler fight, now you're in serious trouble. You've got Ill Will Brooks with an interim title. On top of that, you've got a tournament winner waiting in the wings for another shot. And you've got a tournament that's about to finish that's going to create another tournament winner waiting for a shot. So you got 2 guys with tournament wins waiting for their title shot. Plus you have Ill Will Brooks with an interim title. And you have Michael Chandler, who you know they want to get back in there. And you have Eddie Alvarez. And Alvarez is jumping ship for the UFC as soon as that fight's over. You know it's happening.
And then in the featherweight division, you have Pitbull Fear, who's waiting for a title shot. You have, I think, one other guy that's got a title shot coming up. Your tournament style is starting to go down the tubes.
The tournament is in trouble. And now, if you're looking at bantamweight, Dudu Dantas is hurt again. He's going to be out for a while. And that interview, I don't know if you saw it on the pay-per-view with Joe Warren. They put Joe Warren in for an interview. My God, the guy could put me to sleep every night. So excited.
So fun. And what about King Mo calling Vignor Rebney Dick Rider?
Called him Dick Rider, right on Spike TV, and then later on the pay-per-view as well. And that fight, by the way, let's get to that one. That was terrible.
Oh yeah, the main event.
That was such a boring fight.
Rampage fucking King Mo.
That fight sucked. That fight sucked. And they want to do a rematch. Rampage wins the tournament designed to give him a title shot. What's he doing? Oh, I don't want to fight Emmanuel Newton. We have the same coach. We train together. Then why'd you get into the fucking tournament? Why? Why get into the tournament that grants you a title shot if you don't want the shot?
Yep.
And now he won't take that fight, so now you have a tournament winner who won't fight. What are you going to do? Give it to King Mo? King Mo's, lost 3 fights in Bellator now?
And he lost twice to Emmanuel Newton already?
You built a tournament designed, and don't say they didn't, four-man tournament, Rampage and King Mo on separate ends against guys they shouldn't have been in with because you wanted that fight. You wanted King Mo Rampage, and you wanted the winner to fight Newton. Now, even if King Mo had won, what? You're going to have King Mo Newton 3, and Rampage doesn't want the fight. That division is a mess. And I think that's the only reason that the UFC hasn't let a guy like Dan Henderson go, and they keep giving him fights. Mm-hmm. Because what are you going to do? Let a 205er go and go into that mess with Tito, with King Mo, and Rampage? Bellator might actually be able to use that.
Yeah, they have big names, but
and it's not like Henderson is against fighting anywhere but the UFC. He would go over there for the money. He went to Strikeforce for the money. When Strikeforce didn't have much to offer outside of Rafael Cavalcante.
Exactly.
So he'll go.
Middleweight.
He'll go. He'll go and he'll fight over there, and he'll make money if you let him go. So they're going to keep him, and they're going to feed him to the wolves with fights like Daniel Cormier, and feed him to the other senior league members with guys like Shogun Rua. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. What are they going to do about this tournament style?
I don't know. And to be honest, I don't know what they're going to do with the pay-per-view either because it doesn't look like it did very well. And really this is what happens when you want to compete on the same level as the UFC. When you want to get up on that UFC level, you can't go head-to-head. Who's gone head-to-head with the UFC and won? Pride, it's a different story. Pride had a different situation in Japan, and they had different problems as to why they shut down. But since then, look at all the people who've gone to head-to-head and died. The WEC got bought. Affliction, they failed miserably for whatever reason. Strikeforce got bought out, and just you couldn't keep up. Mm-hmm. Elite XC, Pro Elite, when Elite XC tried it again, when they wanted to come back and give it a second shot, both of those died. With the WFA, they didn't make it.
Yeah. What, 2? They only had like 2 or 3 cards?
WFA had 3 cards early on and then fell off the map, came back and did 1 more in the UFC bought. And that's one of the most important purchases in UFC history for people who don't know about it, because that brought in Rampage, Machida, a ton of huge names. Franklin fought in the WFA early on in the early cards. But that was a big purchase. That brought over some big names. People forget about that. It's not as important as the Pride purchase, obviously. Nothing's ever going to be that important. Maybe not even Strikeforce. It's big.
Yeah.
I mean, the way to survive in the U.S. as an MMA company is to not get in the UFC's way.
Not fuck with the UFC.
King of the Cage has survived forever. They're on to like 280 events because they're a regional show, and they know they're a regional show, and they're cool with that.
Invicta, they do women's.
Invicta finds a niche, RFA finds a niche, and they will feed fighters to the UFC because that's how you survive. World Series of Fighting, we'll see how that works. I don't think they're going to be around forever. I'd love them to.
I'd love it too.
But I don't think they will because they're already in a situation where they can't afford to put their best guys on every card. By the way, I didn't tell you. Just came across like an hour ago. Jake Shields is out against John Fitch.
That's 2 people now. Poor World Series of Fighting. I'm sorry. World Series of Fighting.
So what do you do now? Berkman?
Do you do Berkman? I don't know.
He already beat Fitch once.
But then this is the last fight on his contract.
And they promised him a title shot. So, I don't know what you do. I mean, he's going to wait for Paul Harris, which sucks for him. But who do you put in there?
I don't know.
What are you going to do? How are you going to compete if you're a World Series of Fighting when you can't put on big shows because guys keep pulling out?
Yeah. And
it's an injury to Shields, apparently, but I don't know what the injury is. I mean, who are you going to put in there now? Steve Carl?
Actually.
Well, you might have to. I don't know who else you could throw in. Or you just pull the fight right off the card, and that card's weak.
Then that card dies.
That card's weak. Maybe you can move up the Berkman or another fight with Berkman or something. But
I don't know. And then you have Titan FC that just started out. They're starting up Brand new.
And it's a smart business model. To sign some UFC cast-offs, some guys who got cut from the UFC, and bring them in and
But they're
run
still
them as
young.
yeah.
They're all young.
You buy some of these guys and you put them on shows, and they bring in fans to introduce your younger talent, and you just accept that you're never going to be UFC level, but you're going to be right below. You can be on TV, you can pull in some money, and you can get some young guys that eventually are going to leave and go to the UFC. It's just the way it is. Unless you decide to be Bellator, where you decide you want to try and go head to head, and what do you do with the literally senior league guys from the UFC? You're going to pick up Ortiz, and you're going to pick up Rampage, and you want to compete.
And say that you guys have Bellator saying they have stacked cards, a stacked pay-per-view. Are you crazy?
Stacked with what?
We just listed up 4 fights off of the main event of 173 this Saturday that
I would rather watch every one of those fights.
Every single one of them.
Don't get me wrong, I was really interested for Shlemenko Ortiz, but just because I knew Ortiz was going to be able to overpower him, and I thought it was laughable that everybody thought that he was going to lose. I mean, that was interesting to me because how much does Ortiz have left in the tank, and how bad is that 185 division? Because you never know. I mean, Shlemenko against a wrestler, I think it's a loss every time. But they've never had any good wrestlers in that division, so you never know. I mean, 185 in the UFC is not exactly a strong wrestling division.
Well, I mean, you got Weidman, you got Munoz,
and Chael Sonnen.
Well,
but this isn't 170 where every guy you talk about basically is a crazy wrestler. Whether it's Johnny Hendricks, Robbie Lawler's got better wrestling than most of the guys at 185. You've still got, Jake Ellenberger, wrestler. Josh Koscheck, wrestler. John Fitch, wrestler. I mean, it's wrestling everywhere. You don't see that at 185. I don't know why, but that division's always been a little light on the wrestling.
It is very strange.
Which is a whole different topic and part of why Anderson Silva was able to do what he did for so damn long, is he didn't fight dominant wrestlers.
Nope.
But, I mean, that was an interesting fight, but that's not a better fight than anything on the 173 card. I'm way more excited for Varner Krause. Yeah. That's going to be a hell of a fight. I'm excited for that.
The only fight that would have been exciting for Bellator.
Will Brooks, Michael Chandler. Amazing fight.
Would have been the Alvarez
and
versus
Alvarez Chandler would have killed him. Both of those are great fights. I've taken nothing away from any of those guys. Mm-hmm. Will Brooks, Michael Chandler, great fight. From start to finish, that was an outstanding fight. I'd watch it again 100 times. Awesome. And I would pay to see a rematch. I would pay to see Brooks against Alvarez, no problem. Chandler Alvarez 3, I'd pay to see if it's got a decent card around it.
You just need a decent card around it.
I'm not paying to watch a card that's got Rampage and King Mo on it. And that's got Tito Ortiz against Alexander Shlemenko and Will Brooks against, a delivery boy, basically.
Or the guy who just faced me.
Against phase 2? Oh, Michael Page.
Michael Page. Yeah, Michael Page. Give him an actual somebody. Give him
an opponent and put some decent fights on there. But I don't know if they have the ability to. Does Bellator have the ability to put together a card that looks that good? And if they do, they're going to be in trouble now after that card because they loaded it with so much.
Yeah.
What are you going to put on your next couple of Spike TV shows?
I don't know.
Most of those guys, athletic commissions hand out suspensions based on you just had a fight. Even if you didn't get hurt, you just competed. You can't compete again for another few weeks. You don't see dudes do the Chris Lieben 2 fights in 2 weeks thing ever. That doesn't happen. I don't know how that happened. Honestly, Chris Lieben's brain's probably potato salad by now.
But I still love Chris Lieben.
Yeah, obviously. I love Chris Lieben. Messed up as that guy is, he's great. And he sounds like a good human being when he's not on drugs. But what do you have left? You're going to do Curran Strauss again? Because that's what you got. Your Congo is going to be gone. You lost your best 2 light heavyweights. They're out for a little bit. You're not going to be able to do Alvarez. He's hurt. Chandler and Brooks are done for a little bit. Shlemenko's done for a little bit. Tito. So what are you going to stack your cards with? What are you going to put as a headline? Because I'm not tuning in. I'm not tuning in for, whatever the heck you manage to pull up. If it's a random little lightweight fight. They don't have any depth. Bellator has no depth. They're top heavy.
Yeah.
And they're not even exceptionally top heavy. World Series of Fighting in a card straight up against Bellator, World Series of Fighting is going to kill. The best of World Series of Fighting against the best of Bellator, World Series wins every time.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have anybody at 170 that can put up a fight against Shields, Fitch, Pars. I don't think they do. And that's not even including Berkman and Steve Carl. Steve Carl, maybe Douglas Lima can take out Steve Carl.
Yeah.
But Lima's not going to take down Paul Harris.
And then,
He's not going to beat him.
And then Marlon Moraes at 145.
Marlon Moraes at 135.
135.
Is far better than Dudu Dantas. People flame me to death for that, but I think Marlon Moraes, a serious prospect who looks
And
really
he's still
good.
young. He's very young.
I mean, who do they have? World Series has nothing to speak of at heavyweight or light heavyweight. I understand that. But
Well,
185?
Tyron Sprung.
Yeah, but Tyron Spunk's got that shattered leg. He's going to be out for a while.
He's going to be out for a while.
Okami would take down anybody in there. I mean, I would
He
love
would-
to see
he would
Okami against
beat
Shmalenko.
Bellator.
I'd love to see Okami Shmalenko.
Mhm.
Okami would win.
Oh, yeah.
Probably shouldn't say that.
Sorry about that. We should not have said that word.
Oh, okay. Okami would take him down and wrestle hump him to death.
That's better.
That's a guarantee. I mean, at 155, I don't think World Series has anybody that can compete. I mean, Justin Gaethje and GZ Cavalcante are not going to compete with Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez.
No.
That's a given. But outside of 155, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Titan Fighting's got better heavyweights than Bellator. I hate to say it. Titan Fighting's got better heavyweights than Bellator.
Shit, they're freaking near lightweight divisions starting to get there, too. They got Mike Ritchie. Matt Riddle's 170 or 155?
170.
170. Matt Riddle at 170, all right.
I think Matt Riddle would beat Douglas Lima. Matt Riddle didn't really lose a lot of fights in the UFC. I mean, the guy was good. He just couldn't stop smoking grass.
Yeah, and he actually got cut from Bellator for smoking too much weed.
So, he got caught from Bellator. I want to fight. I don't want to fight. I want to fight. I want to smoke a joint. I'm done.
Yeah. And don't forget about Joe Riggs and War Machine.
God. Some of the guys Bellator signed make no sense to me. I see why you signed Ortiz and Rampage because they're gonna bring in viewers. Even King Mo got cut by the UFC not for losing, but for calling one of the Nevada State Athletic Commissioners female board members a bitch and some other stuff in a meeting, and then some stupid tweets. The guy's a moron. He's an idiot. But
and he's complaining. He's saying the floor was slippery. The mat was slippery on that fight, and that's why I didn't have enough strikes.
Oh God, not to mention, oh well, they just wanted Rampage to win. Bjorn Dick Rider. Oh my God. And we didn't even get to that. There was rumors floating around via a few reputable people on Twitter, Ariel Helwani and I believe Jeremy Botter and a couple other people were talking about it, that Viacom's not too happy with Bjorn Rebney and is looking to replace him with rumored Scott Coker or Randy Couture.
Randy Couture's already dug a hole with the UFC, so why not him?
But I don't think Randy Couture's got... Randy Couture is a figurehead. Great idea. As an actual businessman taking care of it, I don't think so. And Scott Coker, if you're Scott Coker, I don't think you want that job.
You don't want to fuck with the UFC twice.
You already went head-to-head with Strikeforce, and it didn't end well for you. Why would you want to do it again?
Yep.
I don't think you would.
No.
I don't know if Viacom isn't happy with Rebney, then get rid of Rebney because I don't think it's really going to be that much of a problem. I don't think it's going to hurt you that bad. And we just completely left that tangent, but signings from ex-UFC guys. I understand the Rampage, Tito, King Mo, but Kendall Grove.
Well, Kendall Grove was in regional shows for a while.
Yeah, but why if you're Bellator, what do you get from signing Kendall Grove? If you sign Kendall Grove and your guys beat him, you beat Kendall Grove with a UFC cut and just didn't have a great success on the regional circuit. It doesn't do anything special for you. No. If he beats your dudes, ex-UFC fighter who got sent away for losing and didn't do too hot on the regional shows, kicking the shit out of your fighters. That looks terrible for you. Joe Riggs? Really?
Joe Riggs.
Diesel Riggs? I didn't even know he was still alive.
Yeah, that guy he disappeared forever. He was gone. No one knew of him.
Joey Beltran, really?
Joey Beltran.
Joey Beltran comes in and beats anybody in your division, and that's terrible for you because he went on a complete slide in the UFC. Loss, over and over again.
Yeah, but the fight against Rampage, they called that way too quick. It was 5 seconds left in the first round,
especially
and you call it?
With the executioner who just takes shotgun blasts to the head and stands up like nothing happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
They wanted Rampage to win that fight.
It makes me wonder what's next. And no offense to any of these guys, because I love them all. But what are they going to pick up next? Paul Buentello? Is that who's coming back next?
No. Where is he right? Legacy? Isn't he on Legacy?
Yeah, he was fighting for Legacy. It's just, that's the kind of guy Bellator is looking to get. And I know people are going to talk shit. Oh, well, the UFC just picked Arlovsky up. Arlovsky is on a win streak and his only loss. 6-1-1. And the 1-1 are Anthony Rumble Johnson, who looks like goddamn Superman right
He's
now.
a fucking beast.
And a no contest that was crap to Tim Sylvia when he was beating the hell out of Tim Sylvia. And ONE FC had some weird rules about kicks on the ground were only okay when they declared open guard and closed, or some rule like that, and they switched it real quick, and he kicked him. Well, they hadn't declared it. Oh, it's a no contest. He beat him. He beat Tim Sylvia's ass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Tim Sylvia at like 350 pounds, too. Not any little skinny Tim Sylvia like we used to see.
Yeah.
I can't believe we call him old Tim Sylvia skinny.
We're not even going to talk about Tim Sylvia in this one.
Yeah, because that's a whole nother story.
That him trying to get back in the UFC after going, 4 or 3-1, whatever it is recently. You can't. Especially at the weight you are now. Unless you can go down to 265, get some wins under your belt, and then get back in the UFC. I would love to see you back in the UFC. But
yeah, let's not get this wrong. I love Tim Sylvia, and I would love to see him back in the UFC. But he's got to win some fights first. And if you've seen recent pictures of Tim Sylvia, man, I know the UFC's going to Maine, you want in, but
not a super heavyweight.
Be realistic. There's been one super heavyweight fight in the history of the UFC, and they're not going to do another one.
No.
Just so you know. Mm-hmm. And just for those of you that didn't know, the winner of that super heavyweight fight, Josh Barnett.
All right, fight fans. We're going to wrap it up right now. Remember, UFC 173 this Saturday. We got our picks in. Get yours in. We know who we won. Let us know.
What you think.
Let us know what you think.
If you think my opinion sucks, shoot it down. And try and tune in next week. Do another show.
Yeah, let us know. If you like us, fucking awesome. If you don't like us, keep fucking watching.